There are questions that change the course of a story. Hers came on an ordinary Tuesday, when the sun had barely begun to warm the empty streets of our small town in Montana. My name is Lucas, and I fix things, from stuck doors to forgotten dreams. Clara was standing on the porch, holding a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. 48 years old, she said, and I still wonder if I'm beautiful. It wasn't a question of vanity, I realized as I looked at her broken fence. It was a cry for help disguised as casual conversation. What started as an estimate to fix a fence would end up revealing how long a person can hold on to their deepest truths. If you've ever found beauty, yet others only saw destruction, share this story with someone special. Sometimes a broken fence is just the beginning of something extraordinary. Tag in the comments that person who needs to hear this story today. As I measured the fence with my worn-out tape measure, I couldn't stop thinking about Clara's question. 48 years old echoed in my mind like a number that carried far more history than age. Her fingers drummed nervously on the coffee cup as she watched me work. "You know, Lucas," she said, sitting on the porch step, "this fence is as old as my marriage. 23 years. Her words came out like an involuntary confession as her eyes scanned the deteriorating boards. Some things rot so slowly you only notice where it's already too late. I continued my work, giving her the space she needed to go on. Years of fixing things have taught me that sometimes silence is the best tool. Clara stood up, disappeared inside the house, and came back with a worn-out photo album. "Here," she pointed to a yellowed photo. "I was 25. I was a literature teacher, wrote poetry in my spare time. I believed words could fix anything." Her voice carried a mixture of nostalgia and regret that weighed more than my toolbox. That's when Sophia, the neighbor, showed up unannounced, as she often did. "Clara, dear, are you showing old photos to the fence guy?" There was concern in her voice, but also a poorly disguised curiosity. Clara just smiled, gently closing the album. "He asked me if I was beautiful." Clara lied, surprising me. Our eyes met, and in that moment I understood. She needed to keep that first question just for us. It was her secret, her guarded vulnerability. Sophia started chattering about how Clara had always been the prettiest on the street, but I realized Clara was no longer there. Her thought had drifted to some distant place, perhaps to that young teacher who wrote poetry. As I removed the first rotten board, I discovered coloured chalk marks on the wood. "My kids," Clara explained, returning to the present. "They used to draw here. Now they're too busy with their own lives to visit." Her words carried the weight of many unanswered calls. The morning wore on, and with each board removed, Clara revealed a little more of herself. They weren't just stories. They were pieces of a puzzle I was beginning to assemble without even knowing what the final picture would be. The sun was already high when Anna, the local artist, walked by carrying her canvases. She stopped, observed my work on the fence, and smiled at Clara. "Finally, someone's fixing this fence. You know, Clara, you could let me paint a mural on it afterward." Clara perked up for the first time that morning. Anna had that effect on people. It was as if she carried colours instead of shadows. A single mother of two girls, she turned abandoned walls into painted stories, giving new life to forgotten places. "Pedro is coming with some borrowed tools," Sophia announced, returning with her third coffee of the morning. The retired veterinarian was known for keeping all sorts of useful things in his garage. He soon appeared, accompanied by Tiago, his teenage son who never left his bike. "This fence has stories," Pedro commented, adjusting his glasses as he examined the wood. "I remember when your husband built it, Clara. He didn't want anyone's help." Sophia huffed at the mention of the ex-husband, exchanging significant glances with Anna. As we worked, Clara started talking about her stored-away poems. "I have a box full of them in the attic," she confessed, her voice low as if sharing a secret. "I used to write about birds building nests in old fences." Anna moved closer, sitting next to Clara, Why did you stop writing? The question hung in the air like sawdust. Clara just shrugged, but her eyes said more than words. I remember your poems in the local paper, Pedro commented, while holding a board for me. My wife, God rest her soul, used to cut them all out. Tiago cycled in lazy circles around the yard, occasionally stopping to watch our work. Ma'am, you could write about bikes too, he suggested with a mischievous grin, drawing laughter from everyone. It was Sophia who first noticed the letters falling from the mailbox. Her face changed when she saw the official City Hall seal. Clara quickly gathered the envelopes, but not before I noticed her hands were shaking. More bills? Anna asked softly, her hand resting on Clara's shoulder. They always are, Clara replied, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. But we're not talking about that today. Today, we're building something new, right, Lucas? I nodded, hammering harder than necessary. Each strike echoed like Clara's unspoken words, like her forgotten poems in the attic, like the stories that fence held in its rotting boards. The black car pulled up in front of the house as the sun began to set. Raphael got out as if he still owned the place, his expensive suit contrasting with our dusty afternoon of work. Sophia immediately straightened up, like a cat sensing danger. Still messing with poetry, Clara? He asked, completely ignoring the half-dismantled fence and all of us. His voice had that syrupy tone that made my fingers involuntarily tighten around the hammer. What do you want, Raphael? Clara asked, and I noticed her posture had changed. The vulnerable woman from the morning had given way to someone who knew all too well the storms that man could bring. I came to help, dear. I heard about the problems with the city. He smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. I still have a few contacts that might be useful. Sophia snorted audibly. Like those contacts who promised to help with the Alamo 3 years ago. Anna gently pulled Sophia by the arm, but the damage was already done. It was at that moment that another car parked, an old, noisy pickup truck. João, Clara's brother, got out, looking as tired as his vehicle. Thought I smelled trouble in the air, he said, staring down at Raphael. João, Clara whispered, surprised and apprehensive at the same time. They hadn't spoken in 2 years, not since their mother's funeral, as Sophia would later tell me. Sis, João replied, his voice hoarse from too many cigarettes. I came to bring those tools you asked for. It was an obvious lie. Clara had never mentioned João, let alone asked for tools. Raphael adjusted his expensive tie. What a lovely family reunion. But Clara and I need to discuss serious matters in private. There's been nothing private between you for a long time. João took a step forward. Pedro discreetly positioned himself between the two men, his calm presence like a wall. Clara, I called out softly, still holding the hammer, we need your opinion on this part of the fence. She took the cue, grateful for the escape. We'll talk later, Raphael, she said, turning to me. But before she could walk away, he grabbed her arm. We're not done, Clara. You know you can't solve this alone. João took another step forward, but it was Sophia who spoke. She's not alone. She'll never be alone again. Raphael let go of Clara's arm, his smile now a rigid mask. You've always attracted interesting people, dear. But when you need real help, you know where to find me. As he drove off in his black car, I realized the fence wasn't the only broken thing that needed fixing there. On the 3rd day of working on the fence, I found Clara sitting on the porch before the sun was even up, a crumpled envelope in her hands. The dark circles under her eyes told the story of a sleepless night. They want to take my house, Lucas. Her voice was just a whisper. The city says the property is irregular. Problems with old paperwork, property tax debts that Raphael left. Her hands trembled as she handed me the official notice. I sat down beside her, ignoring the tools I had just unloaded. The paper listed a series of irregularities, accumulated fines, and a 60-day deadline for compliance. The numbers added up to more than Clara could pull together in years. "You know what's most ironic?" she asked, running her fingers over the cold coffee cup. "I spent 23 years building memories in every corner of this house. My children learned to walk in this hallway. I wrote all my poems in that back room. And now, a piece of paper says none of that matters." Anna arrived earlier that day, carrying not her usual canvases, but a laptop. "We can start an online fundraiser," she suggested, her eyes shining with determination. "I know people who can help us with the legal side too." Sophia showed up soon after, bringing newspaper clippings about similar cases of resistance to eviction. "My nephew is a law intern," she announced. "He said there are precedents in our favour." "In our favour?" Clara asked, her voice choked with emotion. "Of course, dear. Do you think we're going to let you fight this alone?" Pedro arrived with fresh coffee and his own stories of battles with bureaucracy. "When they wanted to shut down my vet clinic, the whole community mobilised," he recalled. "Sometimes we just need to remind people what really matters." While they talked, I kept working on the fence. Every nail I hammered felt like an act of defiance. Every new board a declaration. We will not give up. "Maybe," Clara said softly beside me, watching the neighbours discuss strategies on her porch. "The fence isn't the only thing being rebuilt here." That afternoon, Anna created an online fundraising page. Sophia started calling all her contacts. Pedro offered part of his savings. Even Tiago, cycling through the neighbourhood, spread the news of Clara's fight. But as everyone mobilised, I noticed a dark car driving slowly down the street. Raphael was watching everything from a distance, his face unreadable behind the tinted windows, and something told me he wouldn't just be watching for long. The storm arrived on a Thursday, both literally and metaphorically. The rain was lashing the newly built fence when Raphael appeared, staggering and soaked. His glazed eyes betrayed more than a few shots of whiskey. "You won't make it without me, Clara," he yelled from the sidewalk. "You think these meddling neighbours can save your house? I built all of this." I was finishing the last adjustments on the fence when I saw him advance through the garden. Clara appeared on the porch, and for the first time since I'd met her, her voice didn't tremble. "You didn't build anything, Raphael. You only destroyed." "Destroyed?" He laughed bitterly, stumbling closer. "Who paid for this house? Who gave you everything you have? And who mortgaged the house 3 times without telling me?" Clara shot back. "Who forged my signature on the documents?" Sophia appeared on her porch, phone in hand. Pedro came out of his house, his presence silent but firm. Anna hugged her daughters at the window, watching everything. It was then that Raphael pulled an envelope from his soaked coat. "Look what I found in the city archives, dear. Want everyone to know about 1998? About what really happened with your father's money?" I saw Clara falter for the first time. But before Raphael could continue, João emerged from the shadows of the garden. "Enough." His voice cut through the rain. "That money was hers by right. Dad left it to her, not for your gambling." "And you?" Raphael turned to João, staggering. "The absent brother who shows up to play the hero. Where were you when—" "Enough." Clara descended the porch steps. The rain mixed with her tears, but her eyes shone with a new strength. "You have no more power over me, Raphael. Not over this house, not over my past. You're going to lose everything," he threatened, his voice losing its force. "No," I answered, stepping beside Clara. "She's going to win it all back, and she's not alone." As if to confirm my words, neighbours began to come out of their houses, umbrellas open, forming a silent circle of protection. Sophia had already called the police. Pedro was discreetly recording everything with his phone. Raphael looked around, finally realising he had lost his power there. When the sirens began to wail in the distance, he backed away, dropping the envelope in the mud. "You're still that failed teacher," his last words spat out before he fled. Clara picked up the muddy envelope, looked at it for a long time, and then tore it up in the rain. "No," she said, her voice stronger than the thunder. "I'm a poet who has finally found her words again." The morning after the confrontation, I found Clara on the porch, a new notebook on her lap. "I started writing again," she said without looking up, "about fences that need to fall for others to be built." Anna's online campaign had gone viral after someone posted a video of the previous night. 40-year-old woman confronts ex-husband and saves more than her house, the headline read. The comments overflowed with similar stories from people who identified with Clara. Sophia appeared with a folder full of documents. "My nephew found 3 irregularities in the mortgage processes," she announced proudly, and 5 different lawyers had offered to take the case pro bono. "The fence is done," I said, looking at our work from the past few weeks. It wasn't just a new fence, it was a symbol. Every board had witnessed a transformation. Anna was right when she suggested painting a mural on it. Now, along with her daughters and other neighborhood kids, she was covering the wood with colors and shapes that told the story of a community. Pedro contributed his old tools to create unique textures. Even Tiago left his mark, drawing stylized bicycles among the flowers. "Did you know I got an invitation to teach a poetry class at the library?" Clara commented, finally looking up from her notebook. "Anna says there are people interested in writing workshops." João showed up more often now. That afternoon, he brought boxes from his attic, old photos, letters, family documents. "I found your first poems," he said, handing a yellowed notebook to his sister. "Mom kept them all." The debt to the city still existed, but now it seemed less daunting. The online fundraiser had already collected 1/3 of the necessary amount. Pedro organized a charity bazaar with items donated by the neighbors. Anna was planning an art festival for the weekend, with proceeds going to Clara's fund. "You know what's funny?" Clara reflected, flipping through her old poetry notebook. "Raphael used to say I was dependent on him, that I wouldn't survive on my own. But I was never really alone. I just couldn't see who was by my side." The anonymous threats still came occasionally, notes left in the mailbox, veiled messages. But now, instead of fear, they sparked determination. Sophia installed security cameras. Pedro started doing nightly patrols with his dog. "The fence is done," I repeated. "But I think our work here is just beginning." Clara smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "It's no longer about fixing broken things. It's about building something new." 6 months have passed since that first morning when Clara asked me if she was beautiful at 48. Today, sitting at Mateus's cafe, I watch through the window as she leads her poetry workshop on her front porch. The fence, now a living mural of stories, serves as inspiration for her students. "Sometimes we need to lose something to find everything," she wrote in her new book of poems, published through a crowdfunding campaign organized by Anna. The first edition sold out in a week, all copies sold right here in our small town. The anonymous threats finally stopped when João discovered they were coming from an old business partner of Raphael's, trying to pressure Clara into selling the house. Sophia, with her network of contacts, made sure the story reached the right ears at City Hall. "You know what impresses me the most?" Pedro commented the other day as he pruned the rose bushes that now grow along the fence. "It's not the house that was saved, it's how Clara saved herself. The debt didn't magically disappear. There are still payments to make, agreements to honor. But now, Clara has a plan. She has her own income from her classes and the book. More importantly, she has a community that won't let her fall." Anna turned the story into a series of paintings that is on display at the local library. "Fences and Bridges," she called it. Each frame captures a moment from those days, including that first morning, with Clara in her blue pajamas, asking the question that changed everything. "You never answered, you know," Clara told me yesterday, as we had coffee on her renovated porch. "If I was beautiful at 48. "I didn't answer," I agreed. "Because you didn't need my answer. You needed to see yourself through your own eyes." She smiled, that smile that now appears more often. "Did you know I've started writing a screenplay? About a woman who needed her fence to break, to rebuild her life." João now visits regularly, bringing stories and memories that help Clara fill in the gaps of her past. Sophia remains the unofficial guardian of the street, but now her gossip is about Clara's successes, not her sorrows. Tiago still cycles through the neighborhood, but now he delivers copies of Clara's book. The Fence Poet, he nicknamed her, and the name stuck. As for me, I still fix things around town, but I've learned that sometimes what seems broken is just waiting to be transformed into something new. As Clara taught me, some fences need to fall so that bridges can be built. And yes, Clara is beautiful at 48. Not because of her appearance, but because of the strength she found in herself, the courage to tear down her own fences and build something new from the ruins. As the owner of the oldest cafe in town, I've seen many stories unfold through my window, but none has marked me as much as the transformation that began with a broken fence and a brave question. From my corner table, where I've been serving coffee for 30 years, I witnessed something extraordinary unfold. Clara is no longer that woman who would walk in quietly, asking for the cheapest coffee and avoiding eye contact. Now she commands a whole table on Thursday mornings, where her poetry students debate metaphors about fences and new beginnings. Lucas still shows up every morning before his jobs, but now he divides his time between fixing things and setting up his future bookstore. He bought that empty space next to my cafe, you know? The same one Clara mentioned in one of her poems as the place where dreams patiently wait their turn. The fence has become a tourist spot. People stop to take pictures of the mural that Anna and the children painted. Some leave notes tucked between the boards, no longer threats, but stories of their own broken and rebuilt fences. Sophia still makes her morning rounds, but now she carries copies of Clara's book in her bag. "You never know who might need these words," she says, as she hands out volumes to strangers who seem to carry the same look Clara once had. Pedro installed a bench under the tree in front of the fence, where he sometimes sits with Clara on Sunday afternoons. They talk about how things have changed, about how a community can rise up around someone who found the courage to stand tall. João shows up on weekends, always bringing something from the past, a photo, a letter, a memory. He and Clara laugh now at the old stories, the bitterness replaced by understanding. Tiago has grown up in these months. He still cycles around the neighborhood, but now he delivers more than smiles. He carries hope in his backpack, in the form of books and poems. Raphael was never seen around here again, but his ghost sometimes appears in Clara's poems, no longer as a frightening shadow, but as a reminder of what she overcame. From my window, I see Clara every morning, watering the flowers that grow along the fence. Sometimes she stops and looks at the horizon, as if remembering that first morning. But her eyes no longer carry doubt. They shine with the certainty of someone who has found her own answer. And when people ask me if Clara is beautiful at 48, I smile and pour another cup of coffee. Because true beauty, I've learned from watching this story, isn't in the question, but in the courage to keep living until you find your own answer. As the keeper of these memories in coffee cups, I can say some stories don't end. They just begin again, stronger, like a fence rebuilt with love and purpose.